Chapter 7. What? She said. You're kidding. I wish I was. I had already told them that I would take the job before they told me what the first assignment would be. I didn't know how to backtrack. Without telling them why. I will quit though if you want me to. Quit? No, this is your dream job. I would never ask you to quit, however, now. Seems we are on opposite sides. Basically, your job is to prove that Vanya did it. And my job is to prove that he didn't. Let's think of it this way, Karina. We're both in pursuit of the truth. When Karina looked at him, her eyes were changing from dark green to a color that Jack had never seen on a human. Her irises were a dark purple. He didn't know what that color meant yet. He was guessing she was annoyed or stressed. I can talk to them and ask them to put me on another case. He was mesmerized by her eyes. No, absolutely not, Jack. You do your job and I'll do mine. As you said, all that either of us will be searching for is the truth, right? What could possibly go wrong? Jack laughed again. What indeed? He said. What does purple mean? Excuse me, she said, confused. Your eyes, they just turned to the darkest shade of purple I've ever seen. What does that mean? Maybe just frustration. I don't feel like I've made much progress on the case, and now they've hired Hollywood's finest former cop as an investigator to work against me. Whoever said irony was a harsh mistress wasn't kidding. It'll be fine. How will it be fine, Jack? Are you going to share what you discover? Actually, eventually I will officially. What do all of those limits mean? Well, since I work for the DA's office and you will hopefully work for Vanya's defense lawyer with Ivan as your paying client, things can officially be shared with the defense lawyer under the rules of discovery. Oh, come on, Jack. I have to jump through all of those legal hoops to find out what you learn about the case and get the intel through Vanya's attorney. That is, assuming the man will ever return my calls. I'm a by-the-book kind of crime fighter, sweetheart. You know that. You shouldn't call me sweetheart when we're having a professional discussion. Then let's have a personal one. Jack got up and went around the desk. I don't want us to be working against each other. She was definitely miffed that she would have to go through the defense attorney to find out what Jack learned for the case that the DA was building against Vanya. Working against each other? Pulling her to her feet, and then toward him, he said, "The only thing I ever want against you is my body." He kissed her again, and Karina could feel his excitement building as their bodies pressed against each other. Are you trying to distract me from the case? We're on personal time now. He eyed the clock. I assume you take breaks too. Eat, sleep, and kiss. She looked at the time too. I could use a break. I have to be at Babushka's in 2 hours, so maybe I could stop and take a break at your place on the way. For kissing? He asked huskily. Among other things, she said, and his face just lit up. She felt warm all over and smiled. I'm off the clock, Jack. Break time. See you at your place. Please hurry, he whispered into her ear. Then they kissed again and he left, running to his vehicle. Karina shut things down in the office and locked up. She had gotten as far as she was going to get today on the investigation, and everyone deserved a little recreation every now and again, she told herself. Even opposing investigators. As she left the little office behind to get in her rental car, she failed to notice the black SUV that pulled out a few car lengths behind her. The driver didn't have much trouble staying invisible behind her in the Los Angeles traffic as he merged onto the freeway and hung back a few car lengths. Very soon there were several cars between his car and hers, but he could see her just fine. She wasn't much of a lane changer. That was convenient. Karina smiled the whole way to Jack's and listened to the radio. She finally made it to her exit and had to park a few blocks away from Jack's apartment, as there was never any place to park on the premises, only street parking. Typical Los Angeles inconvenience. The driver of the SUV parked a few cars behind. He didn't get out of the car. He just watched her walk away. He turned on his radio and reclined his seat. He got the feeling this tryst might take a while. That was all right, though. His employer was paying him by the hour. He smiled. An investigator tailing an investigator. He was very amused. Jack was just unlocking his front door when Karina walked up behind him. That was quick. A little too quick, he said as they stepped inside. Are you sure? You obeyed the speed limit. I didn't look at my speedometer, just the back of your vehicle. If anyone was getting a speeding ticket, it would have been you. I was hanging back. Cute, he said. I was hoping to be more than cute to you. As he closed the front door, Karina pressed her body against his. She kissed his neck and teased. I'm sorry, officer, it was an emergency, a kissing emergency. Jack swallowed a lump in his throat as he felt her warm, soft lips against his throat. I can't even remember what we were talking about. Stop talking then, she teased. I have an hour and a half. Make the most of it. Karina, you are something. He took her by the hand and led her to the bedroom. She continued kissing his neck as she unbuttoned his shirt. He pulled her dress over her head and unfastened her bra as well in one swift move with one hand and without even looking. He helped her lie back on the bed and looked down at her. God, Karina, you are so beautiful. She sat up and kissed his bare stomach as he shrugged his shirt the rest of the way off. So are you. You're the most beautiful man I have ever known. Inside and out. Jack lay down next to her and kissed her lips as he ran his fingers softly through her hair. I love you, Karina, he whispered as he kissed her neck and nibbled at her body. She moaned and closed her eyes. Karina felt like her flesh was on fire underneath his touch. Little jolts of electricity seemed to shoot out of her with each kiss he planted and each taste of her he took. She could feel him not just with her skin but all the way to her soul. She knew that sounded corny, but there was no other way to describe it. She felt as if he were literally setting her soul on fire and, against her better judgment, perhaps even against her own will, she said in a breathless voice, I love you too, Jack. So much. The last two words came out in a choked-up voice, as if it was hard for her to admit. As if Jack were the fire and her words the fuel, Karina could feel the heat in the room intensify. Please, please, she said, wanting him. When Jack couldn't wait any longer either, he slipped inside of her, and then her insides were alight as well. Their lovemaking started as a sway, like a slow dance moving to music that only they could hear. Karina could feel Jack's muscles tense and quiver, and she knew that he was holding back. She locked her fingers behind his neck and her legs around his back, and without speaking, she told him that she was ready for more. Jack didn't disappoint. He was still gentle but at the same time forceful, enough to make her want to scream. His sense of timing was exquisite. Jack's body began to quake and she knew it was coming to an end. She held on with every fiber of her strength, pressing her lips against that pulsing artery in his neck and feeling his life force as he climaxed and sighed her name into her hair. Jack's muscles began to relax, but Karina's assumption that their lovemaking was over for the night were dead wrong. Now as his spent muscles trembled, he began to use his hands and his fingers, his lips and his tongue to reignite the fire that burned inside her, and keep it burning with a renewed intensity. He delighted in her moans and sighs, and at last Karina felt that place he was touching inside of her soul began to convulse, and she reached her climax as well. It was one of those surreal moments in Karina's life that she knew she would remember forever, and be able to relive just by closing her eyes and thinking of them together. He rocked her gently against him, back and forth, and held her as if nothing else mattered but holding her heart to his heart. They nestled in each other's arms, not speaking, just reveling in the aura that still hung over the room. Karina's thoughts were swirling as she curled up against him and his arms held her close in a way that made her feel cherished. And then her mind started clicking as she second-guessed herself. She had to wonder if telling Jack she loved him had been the right thing to do. She just hadn't been able to stop it. It had been like the part of her that he was touching spoke for itself, saying what it had to say, what it was no longer able to hold back. After some time had passed, Karina said, "That was phenomenal." Jack had his eyes closed, but he smiled. She breaks the soft mood with adjectives instead of sleep. You are aware that most men like to conk out after making love. I wish I could. I don't want to, but I have to get going, she said with genuine regret. He opened his eyes. Please don't. Stay the night. The night? Babushka is expecting me, remember? Do you want to be the one who caused me to stand her up? That's dirty, Pool. You know that I'm not scared of another living being. Except for Babushka. Karina laughed. Big tough detective, afraid of a little old lady. A powerful werewolf lady, he said, rolling over to wrap her up in his arms. They kissed, and when things started getting heated up again, she said, I'm really impressed that you want to make love again, but I really have to go. Jack sighed. What's for dinner over there? Karina took the opportunity to get out of his bed and grab her clothes off the floor before she said, smoked fish and okroshka. I'm not sure what's for dessert. What is okroshka? He asked. It's a yummy cold soup garnished with sour cream. It's made with kvass, which is a slightly alcoholic drink fermented from rye bread. Jack made a face. Sounds delightful. Not. Karina made a face back at him. It is delightful, and you better not ever make that face if babushka serves it to you. He laughed. I would never. Karina showered and dressed. By the time she finished, Jack was up and dressed as well. Are you leaving too? I have flexible hours and I suppose I should go into work and bill some cents. You're ditching me for now. Work, as in proving that Vanya is a killer? Or disproving it? Remember, all we are both looking for is the truth. Easy to say, hard to deal with now that I have to go through layers of bureaucracy to find out what you find out. You could always tail me everywhere. Of course you have too much integrity to stoop to such tactics. You know me well, she replied. Nice thought crime though. Thank you. If you want to think like a district attorney's investigator, sometimes you have to get in the gutter with them. I'll stay clean thanks, but after all of this is over and you're allowed to tell me how you found out everything you found out, I would appreciate it. Likewise. As she was leaving the apartment, Jack kissed her. I love you, Karina. Karina smiled and kissed him back. Have a wonderful night of crime. Investigation. I will be at babushka's eating lots of stuff that you don't want to eat. I would eat anything just to be with you. Jack closed the door with a smile. Karina hadn't said, I love you too, but saw in the hall mirror that her eyes were ice blue when he'd left. She had told Jack that ice blue was the color for true love. As long as he could read her eyes, he would be okay with those words being so hard for her to express, especially out of bed and without the heat of passion to fuel her words. The man in the black SUV was still there, waiting for Karina Nosova newbie private investigator to exit the apartment. The handsome boyfriend had already left with a sated smile on his face and hadn't even noticed the stakeout in front. The sun had set, but there was still enough light for him to see Karina Nosova. As she approached her car, he waited for her to pull away from the curb and then slipped in just a few car lengths behind that crappy rental that she drove. He tuned his FX radio to his favorite Hong Kong station. Fisherman's Song at Dusk by Lily Song was playing. He smiled as it was the perfect background music. He was on a fishing expedition and before long, he hoped to bag a Royal Russian. Chapter 8. Hi babushka, Karina called out as she let herself in. Hello Maliutka, babushka said, appearing from around the corner. Gee, kissed Karina on the cheek. Why didn't you bring Jack? He's working tonight, babushka. He got a new job. Oh, I thought since his smell was so strong on you that perhaps you had just been with him. Karina cringed. There was nothing that babushka missed ever. I stopped to see him on my way over to congratulate him on his new job. She tried to divert the conversation back to Jack's work. Even a shower could not wash Jack sent off Karina's skin. Babushka had such a werewolf nose on her. Babushka smiled knowingly, and Karina blushed because she knew that babushka knew what she and Jack had been doing. Babushka let it go and said, tell me about his new job while I finish making the salad. Karina followed her into the kitchen and sat on the stool at the island while babushka cut vegetables. Reaching for a carrot to munch on, she said, he got a job working for the district attorney as an outside investigator. That sounds interesting. What will he be doing? Karina frowned. His first assignment is working on building the prosecution's case against Vanya. Babushka looked up at her. Oh no, that puts him directly at odds with you, she said sadly. That won't be easy in a new relationship. I was not happy about it at first, she told her grandmother, but Jack keeps reassuring me. He says that it's just about both of us looking for the truth. Babushka nodded and scooped lettuce into the bowl. Have you discovered any truth yet, Karina? I'm not sure, babushka. Vanya won't speak to any of us. Actually, Igor and Ivan were wondering if you might try to go see him at the jail. They thought maybe he would talk to you. I would be willing to see him. Let's eat and we'll talk more. Babushka already had the table set and the fish and okroshka waiting. She poured them each a sparkling water and they sat. Babushka said a prayer as she always did before they began to eat. After she was finished, they ate in silence for a bit, except for Karina pausing to tell her how wonderful the food tasted. Finally, Karina said, "Babushka, do you think Vanya would harm himself? Igor gave me the impression that he is so depressed that he may be suicidal." Babushka sipped her water and set down the glass. "I don't know, Karina. Vanya loved his mate more than he did himself. If he thinks there is a chance that he can be with her in the afterlife, he may do something. It would be difficult for him in jail, though. Where would he get a silver weapon to harm himself?" "True. Babushka, do you know anything about Chinese werewolves?" Babushka looked at her sharply. "Stay away from the Lang Ren." "So you do know of them? Tell me what you know." "They are not basically human like we are, Karina. Even you, a born werewolf, are more human than werewolf. These people are born werewolves too, but they are apex predators to their very souls. They have no moral dilemma about killing. It is what they were born to do. They don't have the same socialization as the werewolves, you know. I met one today, Babushka. He presented himself as a very nice person." "Karina," Babushka said in a tone that she rarely used with her granddaughter, "you need to heed my words here. Stay away from them. Far away." Now her voice was shrill. Karina said, "I hate it when your voice does that screechy sound when you are upset." She could tell that her grandmother wasn't going to relent on this. "1. I just don't understand why everyone seems to know they exist except for me." They ate the rest of their dinner in relative silence. When they had finished eating, Babushka got up and began clearing the table. "I know that you feel like I am overprotective. You must understand, though, after all that I went through as a young girl, I am well aware of the dangers that are out there. And then there is our curse, your family's curse. We have all adapted to the ways of being a werewolf, and now it's just who we are, but don't ever forget that becoming a wolf under the full moon was created from a curse. There is much evil in the world. I did my best to protect you from things, but..." "So, you're saying that there are things you never told me about to protect me?" "Yes," Babushka said. "Now let's have honey cake." Karina shook her head. Babushka was so stubborn sometimes. There was no point in arguing with her, however, so she ate the cake, sipped the strong Russian coffee, and listened to Babushka's television report the news in the background. When they had finished eating, she asked, "When you go to see Vanya, will you please ask him to speak to me, or at least give his lawyer permission to speak to me? I need to hear his version of what happened to his wife and to Andrei Koslov, the werewolf hunter, if Vanya knows anything about that. I think that's the starting point. The Koslov clan. They keep coming back like a bad penny." Karina nodded. "Do you know something about them that could help me blow this case wide open?" "I do have background information about the case." "Then help me to help Vanya. Here's what I know. Dominika was killed with a silver knife to the heart," Babushka said. "She was walking home from the market alone at night. She wasn't a born werewolf like you. She and Vanya met in the old country when they were very young. They were very much in love, and in order for Vanya to be able to keep her as his mate, since he was the alpha, he had to turn her. She wanted it as well. It wasn't a full moon on the night she was killed, so she wasn't able to turn and protect herself. I'm sure that whoever killed her knew that somehow. It was one of the things that bothered Vanya so badly. He kept saying that if they had come after him, he could have at least torn open their flesh or ripped out their eyes before he died. Poor Dominika was defenseless against a man with a silver knife. Wait, I just realized something that is off topic, but Vanya, the alpha male and a born werewolf, was married to a maid werewolf. Yes, it was unprecedented and would have been scandalous if it was general knowledge. I never knew. It was Vanya's secret and one of many. Others in the pack believe she was a born werewolf too. Something to ponder another day. Back to the case. Did Vanya ever say if the police knew who killed her? No, but on the news they said they found a weapon similar to the one she was killed with in Koslov's apartment. That is what they are saying gave Vanya his motive for killing Andrei Koslov. They were silent for several moments. Karina said, "Thanks for listening to the news channel for me today. Are they saying anything on the news about his brothers?" "No, but we know that this family will not give up and go home to the Urals after only one kill, especially now that one of their own has been killed as well. If nothing else, they will stay and try to avenge his death. Their still here, Karina, and we all need to be very careful. I know. I will be. Karina paused. I had a dream about Lexi, a nightmare. I'm sorry. Do you want me to hear the dream and read the tea leaves? Yes, please. Babushka rose to put the tea kettle on and came back. Tell me your nightmare. Babushka took her hand and closed her eyes as Karina related the details of the horrible nightmare. After she said, it was very upsetting. When I awoke, I had been crying in my sleep. Oh my dear. You poor thing. Thank you, my sweet grandmother. What does it all mean? According to the dream, you are in grave danger, or could be if you don't pay attention to what is going on around you. I always pay attention. Babushka sighed. Use more of your werewolf senses and less of your human ones. What do you mean? Scent, hearing, and your female alpha's werewolf discernment are your best defenses. Agreed. The dream. A clear warning from Lexi from beyond the grave. Her spirit has come to you in a dream as if she wants to tell you things, but she cannot because you must find out the truth for yourself. Lexi's spirit is with me? Always. Every day since she died, Lexi's energy has swirled around you, protecting you, loving you, cheering you on. Karina got choked up. I miss her. I can't let go. Am I harming her by keeping her close to my heart? No, Karina. She can leave this world anytime she wants. She has appointed herself a spiritual guardian of you, but now that Jack is in the picture, she feels left out. Oh no, Karina said. I love her. She was my best friend. She still is. Just draw strength from her love, and if you see her in a dream, again with her mouth sewn shut, speak to God and angels and ask them to release Lexi's mouth to tell you what you must do to protect yourself. What grave danger am I in? Let me pour the tea and let it steep. Several minutes later, Babushka read the tea leaves. Look at the shapes. Is the lovers entwined and so happy? Oh, it is love. True love. Karina blushed. Jack and me. I went to his place before I came here and we said the words. Beautiful. And then Babushka gave a cry of alarm. What is it? What do you see in the tea leaves? Babushka pointed a shaking finger at another figure appearing in the tea leaves. This. Someone evil followed you to Jack's and he waited for you. Karina screamed. No. Is Jack all right? Yes, but beware, this man is following you and he has evil intent in his murderous heart. Karina's breath shuddered in and out. She thought maybe she would try going by the police department and seeing if she could catch the detective who had worked on Dominica's case was still at work. Babushka, I'm going now. There is one more thing I want to check out tonight. Babushka looked sad. Please heed my words, Karina. Keep safe and no matter what, keep away from the Langran. I will. I mean it, the old woman said. Karina was stunned by Babushka's persistence on the matter. I will. Thank you. For dinner. I love you and please don't worry, okay? Okay, I won't, but I am lying when I say it. Karina caressed the side of her grandmother's face. It's only tea leaves. Doesn't mean it's real. Bite your tongue. When have the tea leaves ever lied? Never, Karina whispered, her fear rising. You're so thin. Take the Russian honey cake with you. I made 2 of them. She nodded. Thanks, I will. I'm so worried about you, Karina. Why don't you move back in here? No, I love my life. And I love seeing you for dinners and outings. It is a special time where we catch up with each other. And you want a separate life with Jack? Yes. Somehow we will time it right. Not yet. Babushka nodded, but Karina could see the beginnings of tears in the woman's eyes. They hugged each other and poor Babushka was trembling. She couldn't recall ever seeing her grandmother so frightened. Chapter 9. Karina crossed the street to her car and fear prickled down her spine that the same man who had followed her to Jack's place was here, watching her. She put her hand inside her purse and felt the weight of her gun. Still, a stir of panic went through her. She wasn't going to get it out and carry it down the street in her hand. And then she chastised herself for getting caught up in thoughts of Jack and following him to his house. She had not even been watching to see if anyone had been tailing her. Foolish, foolish. As she walked to her car, the man was watching. He continued following her. Wishing he could confront her now, she used her werewolf senses and could feel his eyes on her back, almost boring a hole in them with his intense watching of her. Karina did the safest thing. She got into the car, locked the doors again, and headed for the Hollywood police station. The whole time she was driving she talked to the spirit of Lexi, who Babushka had said never left her. Lexi, if you are here, please talk to me. I need you. But no answer came from the spirit of Lexi. Karina said, thank you for protecting me. I feel someone evil following me. Help me stay safe. Her pursuer had patience, but he was ticked that she had driven straight to the police station. Had she made him somehow? And how had she done that? He was one of the best stakeout artists in the business. He was annoyed with her as well as with himself. He went past the Hollywood Police Department, parked a block away and got out. Briefly to pop quarters in the meter. Then he got back in and hid behind his tinted windows. They were dark for California, just on the edge of being illegal, and there was no way that she could see inside the vehicle at night. Unless he turned on a light. As on all stakeouts, he had the car's dome lights set to off. With his night vision binoculars, he could still see her, and she was pulling her purse closer to her. He watched her almost walk inside, and he licked his lips. She stopped suddenly, did an about-face, face-palmed herself, and went to her car again. He almost split a gut holding in his laughter when he realized that she was about to enter the police station with a concealed weapon in her purse. She would have been in serious trouble if the metal detector had gone off. What a newbie. Oh yes, he knew she carried. He had done his research on her. She put something in the glove compartment, locked it, relocked the silly little rental car, and went back into the police station, hugging herself as she walked. It looked as if she was talking to herself, or to an invisible friend. He made a bet with himself that she tasted as sweet and naive as she looked. And then he laughed out loud at his own musings. It would be easy to grab her. But not near the police station. Even he wasn't that ballsy. Detective Valinsky, please? Karina said to the duty sergeant who sat behind bulletproof glass at the front desk. The sergeant asked for her name and what business she had with the detective. Karina told him what she wanted to see the detective about and why. She pulled out her ID and let him scan it. He printed her out a visitor badge and returned her ID. She clipped on the visitor's badge, took a seat, and waited to be called into the inner sanctum of the Hollywood PD. A few minutes later, the sergeant told her the detective would see her and gave her directions to his office. Thank you. She made her way down the hall and turned right. Detective Valinsky was a small guy. The desk that he sat behind seemed almost too big for him. He stood up and held his hand out to her. Hi, I'm Mike Valinsky. Have a seat. Thank you, Detective Valinsky, Karina said. I appreciate your willingness to see me. What is it that I can do for you, Ms. Nosova? I'm a private investigator working on the case of Vanya Rykov. He's accused of killing Andrei Koslov. I handled his wife's murder investigation. That's what I was hoping to talk to you about, she said. Are you able to speak to me about the case? It depends on what you want to know, he hedged. She had expected this sort of hindrance, but she was polite. Was she murdered by Andrei Koslov? Off the record? Karina nodded. Sure. Any way you want to give it to me. Valinsky said. Yes, I think he killed her. She fought him like a tiger. She got in a few good scratches and a bite. We didn't have any suspects at first. Except for her husband, who was a real strange guy. But Vanya's DNA didn't match his wife's killer's DNA. Once Andrei's body turned up in almost exactly the same spot we found hers. A silver knife was found in his apartment that exactly matched the one that killed her. So, I had them compare his DNA with that we found under her nails and in her teeth, and it matched 100%. So that's what led detectives to believe that Vanya killed him, as revenge for his wife's murder. Initially, Valinsky said, I hear they found quite a bit of evidence. Otherwise as well, however. I'd like to have access to that file. I just bet you would. He paused. I'll have to go through the proper channels to clear that before I share the case file. Understandable. She was annoyed. Have you spoken with Vanya Rykov at all? Detective Valinsky. Yes. I was the one who notified him of his wife's death. It was very sad. You could see that he loved her deeply. Unfortunately, that won't make a difference to the district attorney. People can't go around playing judge, jury, and executioner. Los Angeles has enough problems with vigilantism, as becoming much too common that people don't call the police when it is a small problem and instead We get a call that requires us to notify the coroner. I agree with you, people need to respect the law. I'm just not convinced that Vanya Rykov is the killer here, of Andrei Koslov. Why not? Do you have information the police don't? No, but my grandmother is a close friend of Vanya's. So, you have a personal interest in the case. Yes, but private investigators aren't bound by police department rules. True, he replied. I do hope you would tell me what you have and I will press for you to have what I know. Thank you, Karina said. Vanya was very depressed after his wife's death. He rarely left his home. It's hard to imagine him buying a gun and tracking this man down to kill him. The man didn't even go out and get groceries or change his socks for days on end. Grief does bizarre things to people. Believe me, I've seen it all. I'm sure you have. Detective, do you know if the police were ever able to talk to Andrei's brothers? They all lived together when he was killed. They were notified of their brother's death by the lead detective. Then when the detective went back the next day to interview them, they were gone. Looked like they had left in a hurry, and had even abandoned most of their stuff. Don't you find that strange? I do. We haven't been able to find them either. It's like they just disappeared. Valinsky shrugged. Did anyone bother to file a missing persons report on the brothers? Interesting question. Who might file one? She was going to scream the police. But instead, Karina said, we have quite a close-knit Russian community. Someone would miss them. Church social groups, plumber park gatherings. Surely someone must have noticed they were there and then they were not. Let me check and see if anyone filed a missing person report. He tapped away on his computer and checked his database. After a minute or so, he said, nope, no one filed any missing persons reports on them. He cleared his throat. Do you think something untoward happened to them? Let's hope not, detective. I'm not hiding information. I'm just playing a hunch. Could you please do me a favor and see if either of the brothers got so much as a parking ticket or whatever, since they disappeared? Something to prove they are still alive, you mean? Yes, she said sadly. Please. He tapped away at the computer again. Nope. Nada. Not even jaywalking. She sighed. Please don't forget to request permission for me to look at the file. I want to find a connection between the two murder cases, something even stronger than the same DNA. There has to be one. Valinsky made a note to himself. Got it. But I gotta tell you, this is one weird case. Throw me a bone. Tell me the weirdest thing about it. Wolf hair. Wolf hair at both crime scenes. Her neck prickled. That is weird. Karina stood up and placed her business card on top of the file she was itching to see. I really appreciate your time, Detective Valinsky. She extended her hand to end the meeting. He stood and shook it. I hope I was helpful. Karina was thinking that she hadn't learned very much, but said, yes, you were. Thank you again. Please contact me when I can see the file or if you have any information for me. Will do. Karina left the police station wondering if this was what being a private investigator would always be like. It seemed to her like she had spent the past 2 days obtaining the same information over and over and having to pry it out of the people who should be eager to get to the truth or help her get to it. It was all a big mind game with the cop detectives who were bound by rules. She walked toward the parking lot. As she was about to get into her car, her phone rang. It was Jack. She smiled as she answered. Hello, Jack. Hey there, beautiful. How was the big dinner with babushka? It was delicious, especially the okroshka, she said with a wry grin. How was work? It was boring. I just did a bunch of paperwork. Tomorrow I will delve into the case outside the paperwork. Any plans for tonight? Karina thought about their afternoon together. It had been amazing, and as much as she was tempted to have a replay of it tonight, she knew that it was probably not a good idea. She had kept telling Jack she wasn't ready for a full-blown serious relationship and she had to act on her words or they wouldn't mean anything. But then she had said she loved him. In bed. She didn't want to wreck it all by telling him that she had been followed to his place by a stalker who had waited outside, according to babushka's tea leaves, and had tailed her to the police station. She looked down the street and didn't see anyone watching her. I'm sorry. I'm just exhausted tonight. You wore me out, she told him. I loved every second of it, but I have to recharge my batteries. Okay, he said, sounding disappointed. I'll just review the case tonight. Then, how about breakfast tomorrow? That sounds great. Come by the office and we'll head out from there. Will do. You be safe out there. You too. Watch your back and make sure you don't have company in your rearview mirror. After a beat, Jack said, You too. Stay safe. When they said goodnight and she hung up, she started the car and pulled out into traffic. As she did, she noticed a black SUV pull out as well. Who is that guy? She thought. And what does he want? The SUV stayed several cars behind her, but she got the uneasy feeling that she had seen it pull out behind her near Babushka's house too. Her werewolf senses also kicked in with a surge of alarm when the black SUV unnecessarily ran a red light to keep up with her. That pretty much nailed it. He was definitely tailing her. A burst of adrenaline running through her veins, she punched the accelerator and changed lanes, moving over to the far right lane, and of course people honked. The black SUV stayed in the other lane, still 3 cars behind. Karina told herself that she was only being paranoid, and when she got to her street she made a right turn and slowed so that she could see if the SUV turned as well. When she saw it continue past, she felt better. She even laughed at herself. She drove a few more blocks and parked her rental car on the street. There was never any parking available in the lot of her building, and she hadn't gotten an apartment with a parking space originally because she didn't own a car. She started walking the 1.5 blocks to the apartment complex when she saw it. The black SUV was parked down the street, directly across from her apartment complex. She could see a person sitting behind the wheel, but it was too far away for her to make out any features or even tell if the driver was a male or a female. The window tint was super dark. She got her gun out of her purse and put it in the holster at her back under her jacket. She had the concealed carry license, and this was the first time she had really thought she might need it. She really didn't want to shoot anyone, but the situation was beyond paranoia. It was real. She was being relentlessly stalked. She considered calling Jack, but he had told her he was going to stay at work. That meant he was at the DA's office downtown, and it would take him close to an hour to reach her. She had her phone in her hand, and as she passed her apartment door and walked toward the SUV, she pushed Ivan's number on speed dial. When it went straight to voicemail, she said, Ivan, someone followed me to my apartment. Are you in the neighborhood? Please come. I need to walk past him to get to my front door. She hung up and dropped the phone into her purse. Karina took a deep breath and summoned all of her courage. She walked up to the driver's side door of the SUV. She could see now that it was a large Asian man behind the wheel. She had to have seen her coming, yet he didn't even try to leave. Instead, he lowered the window and looked at her expectantly. What do you want with me? She said, her voice coming out tough and low like she was channeling Lauren Bacall. The man smiled, causing his heavy cheeks to rise and almost cover his eyes. You seem to be the one approaching me, miss. How can I help you? He had a thick accent. You've been following me all over the place, she said. Why? The man laughed. Someone is full of herself, he said. I am sitting here, waiting for a friend to buy our lotto tickets in the convenience store over there where they are out of parking spots. I only just got here. No. I saw you following me on Santa Monica Boulevard, and I saw you earlier when I left my grandmother's house. Why are you following me? Answer me. The man's expression changed suddenly, and Karina realized he was about to get out of the car. She looked over her shoulder, trying to gauge whether or not she'd be able to make it to her front door if she took off running before he caught her. Your eyes, he said. They shifted colors. You're a wolf, aren't you? He said as he pushed open the car door. He looked even bigger outside the vehicle. Karina involuntarily took a step backward when she saw him. He was at least 6'4" and had to weigh over 300 pounds. Karina decided she could probably outrun him, but she was stubborn enough to want to make him answer her questions. A wolf, she said. What are you talking about? Look at me, little one. Little one? I think you underestimate me, Karina said bravely. Cut the tough girl persona, sister. You're as green as they come for a private eye. And you're soft and gentle, but you're pretending you're not. Karina cringed at that. I'm armed, she warned him firmly. With silver bullets? He chided her. She was startled by that. What do you want with me anyway? Look at my eyes, he said. I know about werewolves because I am one too. She let out a big breath. Okay, so now we know what we are. Hooray for our team. Now answer my questions. Who are you and why are you following me? The man reached toward her face with his large hand. Karina wasn't sure what he intended to do, but she took a step back. No way was the guy going to touch her. As she dodged his grasp, she felt a warm hand on her back and she heard Ivan's voice say, "Get back in the car, Langren. Trust me, you don't want to tangle with me or my pack." Karina looked around. Not only had Ivan and Igor come, but most of the pack was there. Natalia stood to the right of Igor, and Peter and Deja to the left. Ivan was behind her, and it was his hand placed protectively on her waist. Tatiana was absent, but Ivan would never have let his pregnant fiancée anywhere near such a dangerous situation. The man looked around at them, and as they all stared at him, their eyes shining under the soft light of the half-moon, he knew he couldn't take them all alone. What he didn't know was that Natalia, Peter, and Deja were made wolves and couldn't change except under the full moon. All he did know, and all he needed to know for now, was that they were all werewolves and he better get into the car now and go, or one of the born werewolves, probably the alpha who had challenged him, would surely rip out his throat. The big Asian man put his hands in the air, palms facing out toward them. "I'm going now," Ivan said. "This is your only warning. If I catch you near Karina again, there will be no mercy. If you so much as breathe on Karina, it will be the last breath you will ever take." They stood in the street and watched him as he climbed back in the car and backed away. He turned around when he got to the first side street and took off, leaving some of the rubber from his tires on the street. Karina turned toward Ivan and threw her arms around his neck without even thinking about it. "Thank you so much." She kissed his cheek and then moved on to Igor, and then the rest of the pack, giving them each a hug and a kiss on the cheek. "Thank you all so much," she said. "Please come inside, I'll make us all some tea." She went back to her car and got out the Russian honey cake from Babushka. She heard Igor say, "Cake ba. I hope she has stolichnaya," as they followed her to her front door. She unlocked it and they all went inside. "Make yourselves comfortable. I'll put the tea on and slice up the honey cake. Don't forget the vodka," Igor called after her. "Which goes perfectly with vodka, by the way." "I won't forget." Karina wasn't much of a drinker, but she was Russian and understood the importance of keeping vodka handy for visitors. She took the bottle of Stoli from the freezer, and when the tea was ready, she placed the frosty bottle on the tray alongside the teapot, cups, and sugar cubes. She grabbed the cake and sliced it thinly, so there would be enough for all, and took that as well. Now was one of those times that she wished she would have listened when Babushka told her to always have fresh baked goods on hand in case you ended up with guests. Luckily, she had something to offer. Usually, she didn't. "I can't thank you all enough," she told them after the drinks and cake were passed around. Everyone ate and eyed over Babushka's cake. "You called, we came. It's what family does," Ivan told her. Igor said in his usual cynical way, "Even if that family member is ashamed of the rest of the pack." "Stop it, Igor," Ivan scolded. "Brother," Igor pressed on in one of his more diplomatic tones of voice, "I'm only speaking the truth. Karina is ashamed of us. She said so herself not long ago." Ivan started to speak again, but Karina stopped him. "It's okay, Ivan. Igor's right, I did say that, and most of you here heard it. When I did say it, I was referring to what you told me about killing humans like the traffickers. I am still unhappy about that, to say the least. I've never stopped considering you all family, however," she said, looking at Igor. "Family fights, they disagree, but they stay family, right?" Igor raised an eyebrow, and then his glass of vodka sans the tea. He smiled at her and downed the glass. Ivan spoke then, saying, "What we really need to be talking about is this: why are the Langren following you? What do they have to do with any of this?" Karina shook her head. "I don't know. I wish I did. I only just learned of them, and suddenly one of them was following me. It doesn't make sense." Peter and Deja were still new to the pack, and thus far Karina had not heard either of them express much more than a hello or goodbye, so she was surprised when Deja said, "Royalty, that's what they're after." "Excuse me," Karina said. Peter said, "The Turkics have been trying for hundreds of years to assert their independence from Russia, although they are no longer politically tied To Russia, they depend on them economically. They've never been able to assert complete independence. What if, for a change, they had something to offer? Russia. Something that no longer made them dependent upon them? What if they could give them their Anastasia, or even one of her heirs? Karina was terrified. That makes no sense. We're the only ones who know about my babushka. Vanya knows, Igor said quietly. Fear prickled her neck. It still doesn't make sense, Karina said. How would that tie in with the deaths of Andrei Koslov and Vanya's wife, Dominika? You're the PI, Karina. Isn't that what we hired you to figure out? Igor asked. She nodded. Karina looked at Ivan. Does any of this make sense to you? If it were true, who would Vanya have told about babushka's true identity, and why? Ivan's eyes looked sad. Vanya has not been himself since Dominika's murder. Don't know who he may have told or why. But I don't know what other reason the Langrun would have for following you, Karina. Maybe you should take yourself off this case and stay out of harm's way. She shook her head. Danger is part of the job. It's my first paid investigation. I won't back down from my goal of finding out who is the killer and clearing Vanya's name. Something could happen to you. Something almost did tonight. Who knows what would have happened if we hadn't been in the neighborhood and you hadn't called me, Ivan said. Igor stood up. We hired her to do a job, brother. Let her do it. She's not yours to protect any longer. Karina shot Igor a surprised look. Was he actually sticking up for her? Ivan shot Igor a look to shut up, but didn't say anything. Instead he stood as well and told the pack, meet me outside. I'll be right there in a minute. They all did as the alpha male ordered. Peter gave her a strange look as he left, but Karina couldn't interpret what it meant. When they were gone, including Igor, Ivan turned to Karina and took her hands in his. His eyes were ice blue as he looked into hers. Karina, I will always protect you. I will always love you, and I will always come as soon as you call. Be safe. I don't know if Peter and Deja's theory is right or not, but if it is, both you and your babushka could be in serious danger. I'll be safe, Ivan. Thank you for everything. I'm not sure I believe their theory that the Langrun want to use babushka and me to make some sort of a deal, but I'll look into it and I promise I'll stay safe. Ivan gave her a long hug, and she walked him to the door. As she pulled the door open, she was met by Jack. He stood in her doorway holding a huge bouquet of flowers in one hand and a gift basket in the other. He looked slowly from her to Ivan and back again. I was just leaving these on the doorstep, so carry on with whatever you were doing. Jack turned to leave. Karina glanced at Ivan and the slightly amused look on his face made her angry. Jack, it's not what you think. Don't go, she said, but Jack kept walking. Ivan whispered, gotta go, the pack is waiting. Good luck. He left in the other direction. Exasperated, Karina sighed heavily and started out after Jack. Jack, wait. You're acting like a child. That did it. He turned around to face her and stormed back in her direction. A child? Did you really say a child? He was now just inches from her face. I'm a mature man with all of a man's emotions, logic, and intellect. Come back to my apartment and let me explain, please. Jack looked so hurt that Karina's heart ached. Karina, it doesn't matter what the explanation is. When you opened that door and you and Ivan were looking at each other, both yours and his eyes were ice blue. I don't need any more explanation than that, unfortunately. He turned again, and this time when she called out to him, he didn't even look back. Karina held back the tears until she got to the doorstep of her apartment. That was when she saw the flowers and the basket of bath salts and bubbles that Jack had dropped there when he'd seen her and Ivan together. There was a card on the basket. She picked it up and held it under the bright porch light. It read, "Relax tonight on me. I love you, Jack." That was when the tears came, and once they started, she didn't think they would ever. Chapter 10. The next morning, as soon as she awoke, Karina tried twice to call Jack. He didn't answer either time. She didn't leave a message. He was right. She couldn't explain away the color in her eyes. She had to find some way to convince Jack that he was the one she wanted, not Ivan. She could have already been with Ivan years ago. She'd chosen Jack. That should mean something. She got dressed and decided that after she did what she had to do today, she would go see him in person. First though, she had to go see Babushka. When she got to her house, Karina found her grandmother out back in her little herb garden. Babushka had her back to her, but when Karina came out the back door, she turned around at once and set down her watering can. Melietka. What is it? Karina folded herself into her grandmother's open arms and the tears came. Again. My heart is breaking. Babushka ran her hand down the back of her hair and rocked her back and forth, like she had done when Karina was a child. Finally Babushka held her so she could see her face and said, "It's Jack." Karina nodded. "It was inadvertent, but I messed it all up with Jack." Her grandmother led her over to the cement bench she'd had in the backyard, since they had come over from the old country, and they sat down. "Tell me what happened." Karina wiped her face on the back of her hand. "I'm sorry," she said. "This is not what I came here for, but I always end up troubling you." "That's what I'm here for, but what did you come here for?" her grandmother asked, holding out a neatly ironed handkerchief. Karina took it and wiped her eyes and then blew her nose. She took a deep breath. "I was being followed last night. When I confronted the man, he called me a wolf. I got scared and I called Ivan for backup because Jack was all the way downtown and my wolf senses had me guessing that Ivan might be in the neighborhood. You did the right thing. Ivan wouldn't let anything happen to you. I know that now. That man was about to touch me when the pack got there. When he was confronted by them, he backed down. Igor called him a Langren." "Again with the Langren?" "Yes, Babushka. This is bad, very bad, that they are sniffing around you." "I know." Afterward, while we were talking about what they could possibly want with me, the pack came up with a theory. After she didn't speak for a few moments, Babushka said, "Would you like to share it with me? They think that the Langren want you or me or both of us. It's silly, right? They say that it has something to do with Turkic politics and it is about our royal blood." "Oh no. So this royalty madness has finally reached America. Took years. But here they are now. It's the Bolsheviks in Petrograd all over again." "Babushka, do you think it is about this? I mean, I am working on a murder case. Actually, two now, because I believe that the unsolved murder of Vanya's wife is connected to Andrei Koslov's death, which is also unsolved." Babushka groaned and put her arm around her granddaughter. She said, "My poor Karina, born into a family that is cursed more than once and years later, you are the one being punished for all of our sins." "Babushka, you think it's true? That it is about our royalty?" "I think it is a valid theory," she said. "If it is true, it probably means that Vanya has been running his mouth again about my secrets. He is the reason. The pack knew about me, and he has to be the reason these people know too. Why would Vanya do that to you? To us? You are his friend, probably his only real friend." Vodka loosens lips. "So does pain. The pain of losing his wife unleashed an unearthly grief for him." "But what would all of this have to do with Dominika and Andrei's murders?" Karina asked. Babushka shrugged. "I don't know, maybe nothing." She said this as if she were trying to convince herself. It would be a terrible coincidence if this all just happened at once. It has to be connected somehow. Too much is happening to ignore that they are connected by more than the matching DNA at the two murder crime scenes, and the wolf hairs found at both scenes. Oh my, big trouble in Little Russia. Our city within West Hollywood is becoming werewolf hunter central. Babushka hugged her granddaughter. "This afternoon I will go talk to Vanya at the jail. Hopefully he can give us some insight. Meanwhile, you stay away from these Langren. Go talk to Jack. Tell him what is happening so that he can help protect you." "I don't need Jack as my bodyguard. I will go talk to him, however. Feel so bad about the way things were left last night." "What happened that had Jack storming off?" "He saw that Ivan's eyes were ice blue and so were mine when we were looking at each other," Karina admitted. "And he knows what the color means." "True love," Babushka murmured, looking at Karina with even more worry in her eyes. "I'm in big trouble in more ways than one. Don't let this misunderstanding with Jack distract you from your personal safety." Chapter 11. Karina left Babushka's house and headed toward Jack's apartment. He still wouldn't take her call, so she was just going to try there first and then probably his work afterward if he wasn't home. When she got to his door, she listened and sniffed the air before knocking. He was home. His scent was too strong to only be what was left behind. She knocked, and when there was no response, she yelled, "Jack, I know you're in there. Open the door please, we need to talk. He didn't respond again, so this time she pounded. The door next door opened, and an old bald man wearing a red plaid bathrobe and ratty slippers looked out at her. Hey miss, I worked all night. Is the banging absolutely necessary? I'm sorry, Karina replied. I'll try to keep it down. The man gave her a curt nod and started to close his door. Then, as if in afterthought, he opened the door again and said, He's there. I saw him picking up his newspaper when I got home from work this morning. I haven't heard him leave. Jack's door opened. He glared at the old man and said, I've got it, Bert. Thanks. Bert closed his door quickly. Jack, I'm sorry I disturbed your next door neighbor. Please let me come in. We need to talk. Come on in. Jack opened the door, stepped back, and she let herself in. He followed her down the hall to the living room. I was just getting ready to leave. I'm not trying to be rude, but it's only my second day at work. I don't want to be late. I'll be quick, Karina said. First of all, I don't know if you remember what your first love was like, but I'd be willing to bet you my right arm that if she walked in the room right now, your eyes would turn ice blue. It's not voluntary, Jack. Loving someone that deeply never really goes away. But love changes, and sometimes that first love doesn't mature as we do, so we move on and we fall in love again. That doesn't take away the first one. Our hearts just grow larger to accommodate another. Bottom line? My heart and my soul want to be with you, not Ivan. Jack stared at her without speaking. At last she said, That's all I have to say. I hope you believed me. It's the unvarnished truth. He still said nothing, so she started back toward the door. Before she reached it, he said, Why was Ivan even there? She turned around. I called him because I was being followed and I was scared. Followed? So you called Ivan? You were an hour away at work. I called Ivan because I knew the nearby pack would come with him, and they did. I was being followed by a Langren Jack, a Turkic werewolf. He looked more hurt by the fact that she called Ivan and not him than he had looked the night before. Jack, I'm not going to ask for your forgiveness because I didn't do anything wrong. I do ask you to let go of your ego and just be understanding. We have past, both of us. It would be unrealistic to pretend that neither of us has a past. It is a necessary and healthy part of life to acknowledge our personal history without clinging to it. He didn't say anything else, so she left. He let her go. Chapter 12. Karina was peeved at Jack because he was acting like a jealous fool. She got back to her office, determined to find out something today about the case. The first thing she did was pick up the phone and call Chung Lee. Ms. Nosova, he said when he picked up. Nice to hear from you. I'd like to say the same, she told him. But I'll cut right to the chase. Do you have people following me? Why would I do that? He asked with indignation in his voice. I don't know. But yesterday I was followed by a large man who accused me of being a werewolf and told me he was one too. Chung Lee laughed and then said, I'm sorry, Ms. Nosova. I was just trying to picture you with fangs. Karina had an evil thought about showing him her fangs, but she stayed silent. I am a respected businessman, Ms. Nosova. I don't know why people are suddenly running around associating me with werewolves. Then it was just a big coincidence that after you and I spoke of werewolves, no less, that suddenly I was followed by a man who was claiming to be one. I agree that it seems related, he told her. I can assure you, however, that it was not me who hired or encouraged him. Can you describe him to me? Tell me what he was driving. He was a very large Asian man. His face was so big that his eyes disappeared into his cheeks when he smiled. He was driving a large black SUV. Did you get a plate number? No, she lied. I'll see what I can find out and get back to you, he said dismissively. Ms. Nosova, I promise you I will look into this. I will call you if I find out anything. Thank you. When she hung up, she called Melanie, Jack's friend and old colleague at the police department. After being transferred a few times, Karina finally got through. Hi, Melanie. My name is Karina Nosova. I'm a private investigator and a friend of Jack Hardy's. Oh yes, I've heard Jack mention you, the woman said. His girlfriend. Right. Yes, Karina said. Nice to sort of meet you. What can I do for you? I hope to have a license plate traced. You can do that online with your PI license number and your credit card. I can. Karina was embarrassed that she learned this some time ago, but somehow did not think of it today. Yes, but what do you need it for? It's related to a case I'm working on. Jack said you were wonderful at things like that. Karina didn't want to outright lie and say that Jack told her to call Melanie, but she wanted to give her the impression that Jack had told her to call. Karina thought it had worked when the woman said, "Sure, give me the plate number." Karina told her the plate number. Melanie asked, "Is it a California plate? What type of vehicle?" Karina told her, and she could hear the woman's keyboard clicking. Melanie spoke again, but instead of giving Karina the information she sought, she said, "Karina, I'll have to call you back. Can I have your number?" Karina gave it to her and hung up, wondering what that was about. She told herself someone had probably just come into the office and to stop being such a worrier. Melanie dialed Jack as soon as she hung up with Karina. "Hey Jack, it's Melanie," she said when he picked up. "Hey old friend," Jack said. "What's up?" Melanie told him about Karina's call, and what she had found out when she'd looked up the license plate. "Wow," Jack said. "Thank you, Melanie. I'll handle it from here." "Sure, Jack. Are you doing okay?" "I'm great, Melanie," he lied. "It was good to hear from you and thanks again." Jack hung up and sighed deeply. What the hell had Karina gotten herself into? He dialed her number and got her voicemail. He left a message. "Karina, please stay at the office. I will be there in half an hour. Don't go anywhere. I need to talk to you. It's important, so please just sit tight." Karina had been on the other line with Babushka when Jack had called. She hadn't even looked at the phone when it beeped in. If she would have picked up. No matter how hard she tried, her work hadn't gotten her mind off of Jack and their conflict. However, she was on the phone with Vanya's lawyer's secretary, and she was telling her that Vanya had agreed to sign a release to speak with her, and only her. She told him she'd go right over to the jail. She hung up without noticing she had a new voicemail. She was excited and hoped that the attorney Vasily Kandinsky could answer some of her questions, if they ever got to speak. Karina stepped outside her office and headed for her car. When she got to her car, there was a man leaning against the hood. When she noticed him, she turned around to walk away or run if she had to, and suddenly another man was behind her. They had her sandwiched in. The man smiled at her and ordered in Russian, "Get in the car and don't make a scene. I have silver bullets." Karina turned back toward the car. The man leaning on the hood pulled his jacket back slightly to show her his gun and said, "So do I." Karina did as she was told, getting into the passenger side of her car. The man on the car hood got in the driver's seat. The other man got in the back seat. "Keys," the man said to her, holding out his hand. Karina reached into her purse. She could feel the cold steel of her own Ruger LCP 380. She decided that it would be a stupid idea to shoot him and instead handed the man the car keys. "Where are we going?" "There's someone who wants to see you," the driver replied. "You could have just called me and set up a meeting. A kidnapping is an unorthodox way to get someone to visit you," she said. The man in back said in Russian, "He's an unorthodox man." The two men laughed as if it was some kind of private joke. Karina thought it best to just remain silent for now. They drove through downtown Los Angeles, taking Grand Street to Temple and coming to a stop in one of the parking lots adjacent to the massive Cathedral of Our Lady of the Angels. Karina looked at the ornate 11-story building, and then at the driver of her car and said, "Are we going to Mass together?" "Get out," the man said to her. The other man had already stepped out of the car. Karina again did as she was told. She was led by the hand, one on each side of her, into the rear of the building and down a flight of stairs. They had apparently done this before. They went through a gorgeous door flanked on each side by guardian angels, one on each side and each holding torches. They went down a long hallway, and the beautiful stained glass windows that lined it awed Karina, even in her current state of fear. At the end of the hallway was another awe-inspiring sight, a sarcophagus below a dome with beautiful lettering and artwork carved into it. Karina didn't realize, however, until she was led past a family chapel and into a small room, that she was actually being taken into one of the crypt spaces. Waiting for them, there was a very sharply dressed and quite attractive older man. He smiled at her and said, "Welcome, Vnuchka." Vnuchka was niece in her language. Karina had no uncles. She had no living relatives other than Babushka. Niece? Who are you? Karina asked. I'm your uncle Dmitri, he said with a smile. It's a pleasure to finally meet you. He came toward her and she took a step back. I don't have an uncle Dmitri, she told him. I'm afraid you're mistaken. No, love, he said, making her bristle at the term. I'm sure of it. I've been searching for you and your grandmother for a very long time. Karina decided to take another approach. How are you related to me? On my mother's or father's side. I am your maternal grandfather's son. Karina took a minute to process what he was telling her, and then she gasped. Dmitri? Dmitri Rasputin? It's not possible. The man laughed. You of all people, my vnuchka, should know that all things are possible. I need to sit down, Karina told him. She was suddenly feeling lightheaded. The man who called himself her uncle snapped his fingers in one of the other. Men gave her his chair. If this is true, then you are also a... He laughed again. A werewolf, he said. Yes, Karina. If you were to look me up, the history pages would say that I died in 1937. My father was a born werewolf. What do you think that made his children the same? I was imprisoned at the time for a misunderstanding. I was sick with the dysentery, but I am a werewolf, so, as you know, it didn't kill me. I used it to escape. I fled to the hills above East Turkestan. The Turkics. Karina started to put things together. Yes, the ones that you and your pack refer to as Langran. They are my pack, and that pack stands over 2,000 strong. 2,000? That's insane. We are the largest pack that has ever existed in all of history, and I am the alpha. Karina. Your uncle is someone to be proud of. She digested all this news for several long moments. What do you want from me? He came close to her again, and this time she stayed put. He knelt down on one knee so that he could look into her eyes. She could see now how his color shifted as he spoke. Family, Karina. I want family. Karina was skeptical that this man had spent almost 80 years searching for Babushka and later her, simply because he wanted family. She asked him, so why not just knock on our door and say, hi, I'm your long-lost uncle? Why the kidnapping and all of this cloak and dagger meeting in a crypt? Nonsense. Dmitri smiled. You are definitely a Rasputin, he said, as if it were a compliment. It took me a long time to establish myself as the alpha of the pack I joined when I fled from Russia. Once that happened, my loyalties were to my pack, and I had to put my own needs on hold. Recently, however, I had the opportunity to learn from one of my pack members that a werewolf hunter had come to Los Angeles looking for Vanya Rykov. I feared what might happen to your pack if I stayed where I was. I took a leave from my pack to come here and make sure that you and your babushka were safe. You could have sent an ambassador, or UN troops. Dmitri and both of the other men laughed. Now that we broke the ice, I am glad you are amused with me. However, I am not amused with you, she said. I am furious, and I demand that you stop harassing me. This is not the old country, and your elitist views have no power here. Your demands are spoken like a true royal. I'm sorry, my dear, he said. We laugh because I actually did send an ambassador. For years there has been an ambassador in place at the embassy. He watches over things here. After Vanya resigned his post as alpha in your pack, he foolishly became concerned about the dirtier activities of your pack. Karina's head was spinning. This was all so much information to digest. Forget about that. I want to know about Vanya's wife. Did you have anything to do with her killing? No, that was the werewolf hunter Andrei Koslov. And him, the werewolf hunter, was that you who killed him? Not me personally. I would have used my God-given werewolf form to kill him. Not a gun. I can't take the chance of getting caught here in the US. However, because my pack needs me. The hit was done by associates of ours. The hit? Did you actually say that? Who do you think you are? The Sopranos? And which associates? God, I hate that word. Anonymous associates, I take it. Of course they're anonymous, Dmitri replied. You think I would just hand them over to you? The wheels of the largest pack in the world are in motion. You cannot stop them. I want no trouble with your pack. My concern is Vanya Rykov. How could you let him rot in prison for something that he didn't do? Vanya is an old werewolf. He lost his mate, and he wants to join her in the afterlife. With his conviction, A tidy bow would be tied around both murders. And you, Karina, can concentrate on the business of getting your pack back on track via your association with Ivan. You're despicable. No, I am protecting my interests, and also, believe it or not, I am protecting you and Princess Anastasia. You stay away from Babushka. Karina bent forward and placed her head in her hands. She wasn't going to sit idly by and let Vanya take the fall for all of this. There was so much about this man, this werewolf, that she didn't trust. He didn't feel like family. Karina smelled danger. She could feel her phone vibrating, which it had done almost continuously since she had been brought here at gunpoint. Would her uncle have condoned her being shot with a silver bullet to the heart if she had refused to come? Once again, she had more questions than answers. This is an unacceptable situation for Vanya. He cannot rot in prison, so I have to ask you again, what do you want from me? Dmitri took Karina by her hand and pulled her to her feet. Come with me. She followed him to an elevator. They got inside, and the two men who had brought her here stayed behind in the crypt. He took her to the 11th floor. They got off the elevator and he led her to a stairwell that led to the roof. She went up ahead of him, anxiously wondering what he had in store for her. When they got onto the roof, he led her near the edge. Look, Karina. Look out at this beautiful city you live in. It's called the City of Angels, but with our bloodline, Karina, if we were to rule, it could become known as the City of Werewolves. Karina didn't exactly laugh, but a sound escaped her that came from disbelief in what she was hearing. Our bloodline? If we were to rule? She exclaimed. That's what you want? To rule this city? My city? Why not? First of all, you have a pack of 2,000 werewolves. Just what do you think will happen on the full moon when the howling starts and there is not enough hunting to feed all of those werewolves with deer, rabbits, and squirrels? This is a city full of concrete and electric lights and very little hunting for a large pack. He laughed in a way that chilled her. I see no humor in this situation, Uncle Dmitri, she said sarcastically. You are very naive, Karina. We don't eat wild game. She shook her head, not understanding. What then? We hunt and eat humans. No, she said. No. Yes. We have just about cleared out certain parts of Asia and we aim to get a foothold here and migrate the pack to California. No. This is America. You can't. Watch me. Why are you doing this? Why? I was denied a father for most of my life, while he counseled your grandmother's royal family, and then protected her after their death. I hated her for so many years and blamed her for my fatherless life. I was jealous of her. But then I realized what my father had actually done for me. He had created a royal bloodline. You, Karina, are the granddaughter of the Grand Duchess Anastasia Nikolaevna. Don't you see how powerful that makes you? I don't want to be that powerful. I just want to be me. I may be Russian royalty to you, but to me, I am just an ordinary citizen of the United States. I renounced my old citizenship. I took the oath. I took the test, the whole enchilada. I am an American. Dmitri put his fingers under her chin and tilted his face up toward his. This is you, Karina, queen of the werewolves, and you could be the queen of this American city. I have 2,000 werewolves and we can take over this city. You just can't see it yet. I see it all right. I just don't see it your way, you murdering megalomaniac. You're not a werewolf with morals and values. You are a freaking terrorist. Not to mention that if I am your niece, you are creeping me out with your veiled attempt to make us into an alpha couple. No. 1,000 times no. You want to talk about turf? Let's talk. This is my country and I order you to leave it and never return. He raised his hand to hit her and she let loose a terrifying snarl from the depths of her werewolf soul that stopped his hand in midair. Don't even try it or you'll find yourself in a battle for the alpha position of your precious huge pack, she shouted. From me. I have a pack too. You dare to threaten me with your tiny pack of werewolves on welfare? He thundered. You dare? I am rich. I am powerful. I could destroy you and all. You hold dear. You're disgusting. I think I am going to throw up. This meeting is over. She began to walk away and felt her arms grabbed as she was dragged back toward the steps that led back into the church. Dmitri, Karina said, struggling, you're the alpha of your own pack, a large and powerful pack if what you tell me is true. Why do you need me? Why Los Angeles? Dmitri smiled. This isn't about me, Karina. It's about you acknowledging your heritage and coming into your own power. I find it ironic that you are fighting over turf, the very thing that you despise in me. I'm here to offer you guidance. I wouldn't call it guidance. I would call it coercion or worse. And what if I say this isn't what I want? If I tell you I want to be left alone and go back to my own mostly mortal existence and my little ragtag pack, then what? Dimitri smiled again, but this time there was something inherently sinister in. Then I step in for you to the place and glorious position that you refused, and may the god of Los Angeles be with the mortals here, once I unleash my pack upon